What is going on, my fellow Masketeers? Welcome back to another episode of the Mask, and we are here to talk about Ahsoka, a Star Wars story. Now, if those of you that don't know, The Mandalorian introduced or reintroduced Ahsoka Tano, portrayed by Rosario Dawson. And so this show is somewhat of a continuation of her story. And the general premise, because Disney Plus released 2 episodes, is that Ahsoka is looking for the star map, and the star map potentially will lead her to General Thrawn. Now, General Thrawn was thought to have been defeated by Ezra from Disney's animated Star Wars show, Star Wars Rebels. So, in a sense, Ahsoka is a fusion of The Mandalorian and Rebels, but it's based after the fall of the Empire, right? So there's a lot of moving pieces, and you really have to be familiar with the Star Wars franchise to get who some of these characters are. Even though it's a standalone show, you kind of have to have been in tune with what's been happening across the Star Wars verse. And I know for a lot of us, that's hard to do. Well, for me anyway, because I kind of gave up on Star Wars. They done let me down too many times. Too much heartbreak. But due to me being a loyal fan of the original trilogy, I still keep on holding on to hope. Very ironic, because that is literally the entire premise of Star Wars. Do with that what you will. But I digress. Let's go back to the whole show itself. She's looking for the star map. And as she's looking for the star map, there is actually 2 former Jedi who are also looking for the star map. But they are actually working with the Night Sister, Elsbeth. And again, Elsbeth was introduced in The Mandalorian. A lot of back and forth, but stick with me. So these 2 former Jedi is Balin Scroll and his Padawan. And his Padawan's name is Shin Heti. I hope I'm saying her name right. If I'm not, forgive. But that's how I'm going to say her name. Shin Heti or Shin Hetai. Let's go with Heti for now. They are working for Elsbeth, and they're also looking for the star map. And so what happens is Ahsoka has obtained the star map, but it's locked. And because it's locked, she then has to seek out her former Padawan, which is Sabine. Again, another character that was from Star Wars Rebels. She's a Mandalorian who's also force sensitive, and Sabine seeks out her help to unlock the star map. When she does, she's then attacked because Sabine takes the star map with her against Ahsoka's instructions to keep the star map on Ahsoka's ship. But, Sabine being the rebel that she is, she takes the star map back to her hideout to try and decipher it, which she does. When that happens, Shin shows up, they have a duel, Sabine loses and loses the map. So they now have the map and they now know the location. Now the location is somewhat of importance, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. Now what happens, Ahsoka then is investigating a particular dockyard that's in the Republic. And this is taking part now like in the 2nd episode. And in the 2nd episode, they discover that one of the droids that she faced came from a particular dockyard. And when they get to the dockyard, they find that a hyperdrive is actually being shipped to an unknown location. But when Ahsoka tries to inquire where this hyperdrive is going and who authorized it, the credentials are locked. The funny thing about this is, at the dockyard, mind you, this is now post Empire, right? We're now in the new galactic. But in the dockyard, you find that workers, some of them anyway, were from the old regime. And the dockyard worker or the dockyard owner is saying that, again, because the old regime fell, you still had people or just common workers that they didn't really care about the politics. They're just here for a check. So they had to hire people who were part of the old regime because there's no way to find so much manpower in such a short amount of time, which I did think was interesting. But at the same time, it's a little bit crazy because the Empire was a full-on dictatorship. It was survival of the strongest, and they preyed on weaker planets and systems. So I don't know, it was in a sense interesting to see that, again, for some people, they don't really care who's in charge. They're just there to do their job and keep it moving. But with all things, it didn't really turn out the way you think, because Lord and behold, a lot of people who were part of the old regime were still loyal to the Empire. So when they tried to inquire where these credentials came from, it said classified. Only then to find out that they're actually being shipped to Elsbeth. How she got credentials, Lord knows, but that also kind of points to there might be, again, more people within the Republic in higher positions that are still loyal to the Empire. And that's a very interesting premise. Moving swiftly along, when Ahsoka tries to essentially stop the shipment of the hyperdrive taking off, she is then confronted by a Sith Inquisitor. Now, I don't even know how these Sith Inquisitors are still around. Like, they should be gone, but again, they're here. And I believe his name is M.A.S.K. Now, M.A.S.K and Ahsoka get into a duel. It's quite evenly matched. And I will say it's actually quite good. That's the thing about this show. I'm a little bit 50-50 because sometimes the fights look good and then sometimes not so much. So I feel when it's Ahsoka fighting, her fights have been put together quite well. But then when it was Haiti or Shin versus Sabine, that fight there was a little bit lackluster. If I can't really lie about that. That fight wasn't really doing as much. That also takes me back to when we first get introduced to Brylan. He basically has an intro which was very similar, and I'd say very similar to the Darth Vader intro, or was a callback to A New Hope, when Vader came through the Rebel starship to capture Princess Leia. It was very reminiscent of that, and it also had elements of when Vader got onto the ship in, what was that movie called? Rogue One. The end scene of Rogue One when Vader turns up on the ship and he just starts annihilating everybody in the corridor. It had the same vibe as that, but let me not lie, it wasn't able to capture the beast that is Vader. But Balin has somewhat elements of that. I feel like Balin would be Anakin if he never became Vader, or if he didn't get injured against Obi-Wan and he kept all his limbs and he just got to age regularly and become like a Sith Lord. That's the feel that Balin gives to me. So, back to this whole thing. With Ahsoka fighting M.A.S.K and M.A.S.K being able to escape, they lose the hyperdrive, but they are able to put a tracker on it. And so the hyperdrive has basically been delivered to Elsbeth, and she is finishing construction on her ship. And the ship will take her to, quote unquote, the location that the map shows. And she'll then be able to finally get Thrawn back or out, wherever he is. Now, this goes back to my earlier comment before when I said the location. A new piece of information was dropped in the Star Wars universe, according to the show, because there's a point where Balin, Shin, and Elsbeth are talking about the actual star map and where it leads. And Balin says that this particular ruin where they're standing, it's quite ancient and it wasn't built by the Jedi. When Elsbeth then informs him that no, it wasn't built by the Jedi, but it was built by an ancient race that visited this galaxy a very long time ago. Now, this is the first we've ever heard mention of this particular race. And again, we're not even given that much detail, but we know that they predate the Jedi because, again, the Jedi is a very old order, thousands upon thousands of years. And this particular monument and structure was not even built by the Jedi, even though for some reason it carries a very deep connection to the Force. So again, this is a very interesting direction which they're choosing to take the show in, adding new elements that could either enrich the mythos or just plunge it into all-out hell. But only time will tell. So that is like the general concept for Ahsoka episodes 1 and 2. My verdict so far, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna give this like a 6. I feel it has potential. It has potential, but then that's the same thing with The Mandalorian. Had a lot of potential, but then by season 3, it just kind of fell off. With Ahsoka, I don't want that to happen. I think it's starting off decent. I'm not even say well. I think visually it looks amazing, but again, it's Star Wars, so they have the money to make the show look good. The question is, do they have the talent to create and craft a good story? And that's what we're here to find out. So far, I'm not disappointed, but I'm not overly impressed. So I'm going to give Ahsoka a 6. And I am hoping it can continue and only go upwards. Like Dave Filoni's involved. So, again, outside of George, he is the official Star Wars, like, Superman. When it comes to all things Star Wars, when it comes to knowing characters and plot and really embodying the spirit that George created in terms of Star Wars and trying to continue the story, Dave Filoni is the best person for it. And because he made the show and he created the character as well, I'm going to hold on to hope. That's right, I said it again. I'm going to hold on to hope and see where they take it. But by episode 4, if it's looking kind of flaky, I won't even lie to you. I can't do that to myself. I'm going to have to jump ship because this is 8 episodes. I'm jumping ship halfway through. I will not go through another secret invasion. That's a whole nother situation. With that being said, those are my thoughts, my opinions. If you've watched the show, what did you think of it? If you haven't watched the show, tell me your reasons why. Sound off in the comments. Like always, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time at the next masquerade. Peace.